Alright, so here we are, day one-ish. We're going to start using Maya. But before we get into Maya, what we want to do is set up our preferences. So I don't have a D drive on this computer. I have just a C drive here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pretend that I have a D drive just by making a new folder, and I'm going to call it D drive. Okay. So you're going to use your actual D drive on your computers at the school. Or really any location where you're going to be saving your stuff is sufficient. At the school, always save to the D drive, never save anywhere else. Okay, thumb drives back it up to, portable hard drives back it up to. Okay, so here's my D drive. So I'm going to make a new folder in here, and this is going to be called my last name underscore and then the semester. So this will be fall 14 in this case. Or whatever semester we're on at this time. So Sarcona fall 14. And then I'm going to make a new folder. I'm going to call it whatever the class number is. So I'm going to make one for each class that I'm in. Okay, so I have one for each class that I'm in. I'm going to go into one of the classes. I'll also do 1320. Let's go into 2510 here. And I'm going to make a new folder, and I'm going to call it source. Now I'm going to make another new folder and call it work. Okay, so anything you're going to work off of goes inside the work folder. Anything that you bring in, like from the internet or my lectures or anything like that, is going to go inside source. So work and source. Okay, and then inside of inside of the work folder, we're going to create a folder for each assignment. So for assignment number 1, which is going to be the desk, we're going to have a desk folder. Okay, so there that is. And inside source, we're going to make a new folder and call it desk reference. Okay, so you can see if I open up my D drive folder here, and I look through my 2510, this is my source desk reference. I have a work desk folder and a source desk reference here. Okay. So now that I have those, I'm just going to close that, and then before I open up Maya, I'm going to go into my documents. I'm going to go into Maya. Okay, so I went into, on your computer, it's going to be the D drive, and then it'll be a Maya folder. Inside the Maya folder, there might be a 2015 folder. Okay, this 2015 folder is going to be where all of your preferences are. If you're using 2014, you'll have a 2014 folder. If you're using 2013, you'll have a 2013 folder. The cool thing about Maya is it saves all your preferences right here in the main directory. So what I'm going to do is on yours, you're just going to right click and go to delete. On mine, I'm just going to rename it because I don't actually want to delete mine. Okay. So now that this is deleted on yours and renamed on mine, when we open up Maya 2015, we may be given an option to copy preferences right here. Do you want to create default or do you want to copy old? In my case, I'm just going to create the default. Same thing with you. If you get that warning message, click create default. That way everyone's at the same spot. If you use copy, then what it's going to do is, you can see from this window, it's going to copy my 2014 preferences to my 2015 preferences. Okay, and if you've used Maya 2015 before, you'll see that 2015 is a bit different than 2014. Okay, and then this window, I closed it on purpose just so you can see, but throughout Maya, this window will keep popping up. So if we just minimize it, it won't pop up anymore. It'll just be down here in our taskbar. There we go. Okay, so I always like to make sure Maya is full screen just so I can see everything. And you can do that just by double clicking this little window here. Okay, so now this little window looks like that. I can see my entire screen. Voila. All right. Come on. There's a little bit of a lag apparently. There we go. Oh, we're still loading stuff. All right, so these things here that pop up, if you haven't used Maya in a while or ever, These little videos here can kind of help you get rolling with some of the features if you forget them. Okay, so creating objects, moving objects is a little movies. I don't need these to show up, so I'm just going to say show this as startup and turn that off. And there's also this thing, do you want to highlight any new features? And I typically like to have this highlighting feature on, but I don't need this window to pop up every time. So I'm just going to turn that off. Okay. So now anything that's new to Maya 2015 will have this little green bracket thing around it like that. Okay. Even as I go through the menus here, if there's a new menu item, that one will also be displayed with the green on here. I don't think in this case I'm seeing anything. No. And nothing there either. All right, so if I see something, we'll see that it has that green in there. 2014 had a whole lot of stuff. Okay, so now that we have this, let's go down here to our preferences. Right next to the key, there's a little preference button. And we're going to start at the top, and we're going to work our way down. So interface, this is set to polygons. That's fine. Main menu, Here's where we can turn that off. We don't want this to highlight. You can see this little green, that little green. We can turn those off. Or if we want to pick a different color because we're very specific to what colors we like to look at, we can do that as well. Mouse scroll wheel enabled. I like to turn that off for students. Don't get used to using the mouse as your scrolling device because it's horrible. Use Alt and right click. Okay? And I'm just dragging left and right, not up and down. Right and left. This multi-touch gesture thing is new, so I'm just going to leave that on. So I would, if I was you, turn that off, so you don't have to worry about it. Going through this stuff, the next one we're going to go to is the Viewcube. And the Viewcube is this guy over here. Typically he's over here. He's not showing up right now, but typically he's there. So I'm just going to say show the Viewcube off. And I wonder if it's... that's odd. It should be there, but it's not. So just turn that off. You don't need it. It's a waste of time. And let's see, what else? Let's go down to settings here. And for all of the stuff, except for the animation class, you're going to be on film 24 frames per second. Animation class, you should be at 30 frames per second. Okay, 24 for everyone else, just because we're doing a lot of renderings of stuff and gives us a little bit more time. And then the 30 frames per second for animation, just so we have a little bit more time to animate stuff. Animation, you can see all the different settings that are in here. You'll kind of get a feel for these as you go throughout you're working on stuff. And every once in a while, you'll pop into here and change something or adjust something. We'll go down to time slider. The playback speed should be set to play every frame. The maximum playback speed should be set to real time. Okay. So you can see this is set to 30 here. So on my time slider, this real time is set to 30. So if I go to settings, change this to 24, back to my time slider, now it says real time is at 24. Okay, so just be aware that these things are kind of connected. I can't just set my real time to something different than that. My undos. As a beginner, you may want to go as high as 200. Mine at 50 is perfectly fine. I typically don't have to go back any more than 50 undos. There is an infinite here. I recommend definitely don't use that. Okay, because it'll just bog your machine down. So finite, 50, voila. Everything looks good here. Everything looks good there. Now there is inside here, if I can find it, because I don't usually use it too much. Under Files and Projects, you can set autosave. Okay. And what this will do is, if you click it on, enable, every 10 minutes it'll automatically save your project. Okay. And that can be good if Maya crashes and you haven't saved it the entire class. It's a wonderful feature to have on. You could also prompt before saving, and you could limit how many saves you have. Just so you don't have, if you work for 3 hours, that's 18 saves that it did in that time. So I don't have this on. Feel free to put it on, whatever, it's up to you. So I'm going to hit save, done. Okay. Now, that was just our preferences, just kind of like our area here. Now there's a couple other things that I like to change as well, just to make sure everything is the same way. I like to make my own shelf up here. Right now I don't have my own shelf. I have all the default shelves that come with Maya. So what I like to do is I'm going to go to, that's a plugin that I downloaded. I'm going to go to the custom one. I'm going to go to this arrow here and say Shelf Editor. And this custom one I'm going to rename to Sarcona. That way when I use my preferences, I can see, hey, Sarcona right there. Okay. And if I have multiple classes, I can even put an underscore and say Sarcona 2520 or Sarcona 2540. And I can also go to option, oops, not options. I can go to right here and say create a new shelf and add new shelf stuff to that one. Okay. So for now, Sarcona 2540 is sufficient. Save all shelves. So now we're going to add stuff to the shelf here. So I'm going to hold down the Control and the Shift key, and under Edit, Delete by Type History, I'm just going to let go on there. Okay, so I just clicked it once or let go on there, and now if I click off, you'll see that History is right there. Okay, Control Shift, Modify, Center Pivot, Control Shift, Window Attribute Editor, Window Outliner. Let's go to the Node Editor, UV Texture Editor, Animation Editor, Graph Editor. I'm just clicking on each one of these. Okay. So now you see I have History, Center Pivot, Attribute Editor, Outliner, Node Editor, Texture Editor, and Graph Editor. Okay. So Edit, Delete by Type History is that one. Modify, Center Pivot. And then the rest are under Window, Attribute, Outliner, Node Editor, and then Animation Editor, Graph Editor. Okay. And then I'm also going to add in the render view here, right there. Okay, the render view is actually this button here, and it's there. I just like to have the button up here. It's a little bit closer. Okay. Now it doesn't say what these are, but if you look down here in my help area, as I hover my mouse over it, it'll tell you what they do. Okay. And if I hold my mouse over it, it'll also do the same thing. Okay. Or you can just click it and say, oh, there's the attribute editor. There's the outliner. Okay. So you have those abilities right there. All right. So there is all of those things here. Now the other thing we can do, just for the knowledge and the fun of this, is all of these things that are here. If I hold down Control and I tap my space bar, you see that I go into this full screen mode and all those things disappear. Well, what if I wanted to work in this mode, but I still wanted access to those things? Okay, Control space bar pops me right back to that. What I can do is, yes, this doesn't take a lot of time, but if I had a huge scene in here, it would take some time for this to regenerate. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a new box that has all of these things in it. So I'm going to go under a Window, Settings, Preferences, and I'm going to do a marking menu editor. Okay, so I'm going to create a marking menu, and this thing here is going to be a new menu set that I can create. So I'm just going to middle drag my history, that's a popular one, over to, let's say, up here. I'll do my center pivot down there. These two are pretty much ones I like to use a lot. Okay, next it will be the attribute editor, and then the outliner, and then the node editor I'll put the bottom left, text editor bottom right, graph editor top left, render view top right. Okay, so now what this is going to do is if I come down here and I click, it creates this little menu that I could just grab any of these items from. Okay, makes it a lot easier to use instead of having to always jump up there. Okay, so I'm going to do these Fav Hotkeys, and then I hit save and close. Make sure you make the sound effects, it definitely helps. So Fav Hotkeys. Now this isn't used yet. Okay, this is just kind of like I made it, it's hanging out here. I need to actually enable it to be used somewhere. So I'm going to say use marking menu in Hotkey Editor, and then hit apply and then close. Okay, so that menu again was Window, Settings, Preferences, Marking Menu Editor. Okay, now we told it we're going to use it in the Hotkey Editor, So I'm going to go to the Hotkey Editor. So now if I scroll down to User, marking menus right there, here's my Fav Hotkey press and release. Okay, so basically what I need to do now is I need to create a hotkey for it. So maybe like Alt D. Let's try that. Okay, so I'm clicking on Alt, I'm hitting D, I'm going to say query this. And right now it says Alt D is assigned to nothing. Perfect. Then I'm going to assign it to it. And it's going to say, do you want to also set the release? You know, what happens after you release it? I'm going to say yes. So now I'm going to save, hit OK, and close. Alright, so now if I hold down Alt and hit D, nothing happens until I click, and then you'll see that that pops up. Okay. Now there's a reason that I picked Alt and D, and basically my fingers are already in the bottom left corner of my screen, or my keyboard. So it makes it a lot easier to grab these things. So if I go and created a sphere, and then I said, okay, well now I'm happy with the way this is. I want to delete the history, Alt D, click, history, gone. Or if the pivot is way over here, and I need to repivot it, Alt D, click, center pivot. Okay, so it makes it a whole lot easier just to add these kinds of things to our shelf, to our arsenal of tools. Sometimes we want to work like this because it makes it a lot easier to see what's going on. Okay, we don't get our channel box here, but we do get the rest of our stuff. Okay, and we could also pop open the channel box. Oops. Or I believe we can just go to UI elements and display channel box. There it is. So you can see how we have this like floating and still use up our entire screen. Okay, and if we're just modeling stuff, this is perfect for it. Okay, now if I ruined it, you see Control Spacebar is no longer doing what I wanted to. I just go back to display UI elements and I would say show all. And now I get all of them back in there. Okay, my channel box I want to nest back into the screen. So I just move it until it pops back in there. My tool settings I'm going to pull out. Okay, so if I double click any one of these, that'll open up my tool settings. And I can just pull it out. Okay, also Control A, which is Attribute Editor, I don't like that to be nested inside these, so I pull that out as well. I like to have those as floating things, especially if you have a second screen. You can just throw a lot of these things on that second screen and not have to worry about it. Alright, so there's my menu. I can get to it from here, or I can get to it from there. Okay, and if you set your same hotkeys as mine, Alt D, then it makes much more sense when I come to your computer and I hit Alt D and click on it, that it works and it's right there. Okay. Use your hand. Just try it out to see if you're liking the hotkey. If you don't like the hotkey, then change it to something else. But for me, Alt D is a good one. My hand's already right there. All right. So a couple other things we're going to change. Under Create NURBS Primitives, Interactive Creation, I'm going to turn that off. Create Polygon Primitives, Interactive Creation, turn that off. Let's make a new project. So we'll go to our project window. We're going to say New, Folder. I'm going to go to my D drive, go to my Sarcona folder. In this case, I'm using 2510 as an example. And Work. And select. Okay. Now we have that desk folder. Oops. Back to that. I have this desk folder here, but right now it's empty. Okay. So I'm just going to call this desk. And then I'm going to hit accept. And now if I go back to that desktop folder, D drive, Sarcona, 2510, work, here's that desk folder, but now it's been populated with all of these. Okay, if I don't type in the name desk beforehand, I could always do it here too. Like our next project is going to be car console. So there's the car console. Here's my work folder. Let's see how it took me right to the work folder. And I hit accept, and now it's going to create that car console folder. Okay. Set that back to desk. Alright, I could also go under the project window and not there. I thought I could change the name here. I can change it in Windows Explorer, I just can't change it here. But I can change any of these names here. So for instance, if I wanted sound wave, hit enter, accept, then when I come back in here to this, you see that it's now called sound wave. There's also a sound folder. Okay, so I could do multiple things inside there. All right, so now that that's set up, let me just verify that everything else is the way I want it. Should be. I'm going to hit exit. Do I want to save my scene? No, I haven't done anything. Okay, it saves your preferences. It doesn't save your scene. All right, took some time, but it closed. All right, so now my D drive here, Sarcona, 2510, work, desk. Here's all my stuff for my desk. No big deal. All right, so now what we did that whole time we were in Maya is we were rebuilding this 2515 or 2015 folder. Okay, so we are populating it with all of our preferences and all the things that we wanted to have set up every time we come into Maya. So under prefs, under shelves, here is my shelf folder. Okay, and then if we look around, user hotkeys right here. If I were to edit this with Notepad, you'll see that my user hotkey is saving my marking menu that I created right here. So here is the keyboard shortcut D with Alt as the thing right there. And if I go to marking menus, here's my Fav Hotkeys marking menu. If I right click, I did this with Notepad. Here are all those things. Here's center pivot, here's the attribute editor, there's the outliner, and so on. Okay, tremendous stuff that is just going to help you. Now we don't want to have to set this up every time we come into Maya. So what we can do is we're going to copy this. So I right click and copy it, and then in my Sarcona 2510 folder, I'm just going to right click and paste it in there. Okay, that way every time I come in, what I can do is delete this folder. There we go. And right now, if I were to boot up 2510 or 2015, this is going to be confusing. If I boot up 2015 of Maya, it'll ask me, do you want to create default preferences, because it doesn't find any here. And I would hit yes, and I could go on. Or what I can do is take this one and copy it, paste it in here, there it is, and then boot up 2015 again. And then my preferences will be reloaded from the ones we have set up. There they are. Okay, if I didn't copy them back in, those would be gone. Okay, now it might be confusing at first, but do it every day. If it takes you doing it 15 times in one day just to understand it, then do it 15 times, do it 20 times just to make sure. Okay, but every day you leave, you should take these 2015 preferences, and I would copy them, and I would paste them into your folder. And it says, do you want to overwrite? I'm going to hit yes. Do this for all conflicts, copy and replace. Do this for all conflicts, yes. Okay, or you can just be safe and just delete the one from your folder and copy this one in here. Or when you come in the morning, delete the one from the Maya folder and copy this one in here. Now it's important that you pay attention to which one is which, and always have like a backup of this. So I would even just make a backup of this here. That way I have a backup in case something happens and this one disappears and I can't find it. Okay? And then all I have to do is just rename it and get rid of that copy on there, and now I can use it. Okay? This is a tremendous resource. You'll really appreciate it once you start playing with it and seeing how easy it is to work. Especially if you go home, you can take this and use it into your preference folder, and then everything will still work together. Okay? So that's how we're setting up our preferences for Maya. Okay? And regardless of what class you're in, everyone's going to have that initial setup of preferences for Maya.